I think the thing that I want to know, that I think that the others will want to know, is when you first discovered that this is really what you're dealing with.
When I knew it the most is when in middle school. Everything happens in middle school.
Yes.
It seems like it is the open the floodgate. And, if there's something from the past that's there in the child, it kind of magnifies when they're in middle school.
I agree.
Don't give up hope, because hope is the one thing we could hold on to. There have been many parents that their children have come through this. They have normal lives. They can run a business. They can work. So it's not just the end. It can be a future. And getting them through this is all going to make them a part of their future, because they're going to learn so much about life.
Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
Hey, Youth Worker Nation, Youth Workers, this is Doug Edwards with Youth Worker on Fire, and hey, we got a great guest with me today. Now, we have talked about parents and interviewed a couple by the name of Yoes when their child, their daughter, who had become famous before they became famous, with To Write Love on Her Arms. So we talked to them a while back about this, but we haven't talked to anyone specifically about mental illness in students, though there are plenty of them out there. And if you're working in student ministry, you've dealt with it, you're dealing with it, you have parents that are dealing with this, and there are no easy answers. If you've been dealing with this, there are no easy answers, but there is always someone who can relate with you if they are brave enough to do it. But I have Katie on the line who has written a book about mental illness. She's a mom. She's a mom to someone who's gone through this. But the name of the book is Shhh Mental Illness, or SHHH ... Mental Illness, the Silent Disease, A Mother's Heart, K.T. Griffiths. We're going to talk to her and go through some of this book and some of her life and see how she can help you help others, or help someone in your family, help a child that you're raising. If you're in student ministry, it happens everywhere, and we just don't talk about it because we are judged for it. And it's just not an easy thing to talk about because there's not any easy answers. We all love to talk about things that we've got answers to, that, man, when we give these answers, it's taken care of. That's just who we are. And so, KT, good to have you today. How are you feeling today?
Thank you. I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, I've gone through some of the book. I didn't get to go through all of it yet, but I also know your life. So, KT, there's a couple of things in here when I was reading through this. One is that in the endorsements, you got Dr. Diana Morgan, PhD counselor, speaker, and author of Stay Above the Line. You've got Dina Yohe, founder of Hope for Hurting Parents. You've got some good people that are endorsing you here. Obviously, these people believe in what you're writing. Tell me what they feel about what you've done so far. I mean, it's written in the book. They're going to get some of this. But why are these people endorsing you, and what are they saying that is encouraging to you as well as others?
Good question. I am so thankful for these people. I know each one of the ones that have endorsed my book personally, and that just makes it even more precious to me. I have, Dr. Diana Morgan. Hers is for everybody, because she just says that she's in, like, the whole family, anybody that's feeling that my transparency, that you will see my transparency and you'll be able to be blessed by having the book.
Well, Dina Yohe says parents of children who struggle with mental illness would do anything to help them. Griffiths gets that. She says, you get that. She has walked a rugged path no parent wants to walk. I mean, really, who's asking for this? Nobody's asking for this. In fact, it's a parent's nightmare. So let's talk about your nightmare.
It is. I wrote this book as encouragement. So I have shared glimpses of my past with stories in here. So there's a lot of encouraging stories also. But the nightmare part is the fact that we have to even address it. But I want to help parents. I want parents to understand that there's other people out there going through this also, that we have some type of hope that a lady came up to me at church the other day and she had pre-read my book. It wasn't out yet. And she was in tears. And she was like, I can relate to your story. And she's a very private lady. She doesn't want to share her life. She's very private, but it touched her. So I'm hoping that it'll touch other people also that will have a need to just see that we're not walking this journey alone. We are all together. Everybody has something. And it's interesting, if I bring up the fact of mental illness and I'm writing a book or different things, somebody always shares a story. It's like, I have a brother, I have a son, I have a sister-in-law, there's always a story to be told. And so I think this can go wide. I will say that I touched on a lot of stories, but a lot of them some of the bigger stories are in toward the end, where I actually go through some of the bigger stories like trafficking and things. But again, it's a light touch. This is not like really in depth of any one topic in here. It's just kind of a light touch. And I also had another friend who had no clue of what mental illness was. And when she read the book, it was like, wow, I had no idea this is what it was. And she had to stop several times in the middle of reading it and just have a little cry, because then she felt so bad that she wasn't able to relate or know more about this. So anyway, that's kind of where that lies. And I could tell you a couple of my stories, but they are in the book. What would you like to hear?
I think the thing that I want to know, that I think that the others will want to know, is when you first discovered that this is really what you're dealing with.
When I knew it the most is when in middle school. Everything happens in middle school.
Yes.
It seems like it is open the floodgate. And, if there's something from the past that's there in the child, it kind of magnifies when they're in middle school.
I agree.
So my daughter, she couldn't sit still in class. So they had her go and do some psych testing. And yes, okay, you got the typical first start of any kind of mental illness is usually ADHD.
Yeah, right.
So that is the first gateway. And then things progress as the child moves forward. But for her, it was, we got that diagnosis and, oh, yeah, she's ADHD. She won't be able to sit in class. So what happened was actually before that, there were some neighborhood boys and they were playing and things just progressed from that. So this actually started when I would say around 5, in that age group. And these are all secrets. These are things that they don't tell mom and dad. And that is one thing I would say, be aware, parents, because if your child's acting different or something happens, you need to know, but do not over question them. They have to want to tell you. And you give them that opportunity by listening. And I think that a lot of parents don't listen. They jump to conclusions. They'll express their discontent or, they'll quickly discipline them without listening to really what's going on. So I think to build a relationship with your child from a small age is the best thing you can do. And then things progress and move forward, with that.
And how many doctors, therapists, counselors did you have to go through before you realized this is not just this problem, this is a compounded problem, and it took more than someone diagnosing what we diagnose quickly is ADHD and bipolar.
Right.
Well, come to find out, ADHD covers a multitude of latitude.
It is.
A bipolar, there is no one specific bipolar. It covers a multitude of latitudes, and there are all intricate parts that are different. Some are very light, some are very deep, and it's because they haven't defined them all. By the way, I was 40 when they started naming ADHD. But there was not a name for it. It's called, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and get straightened out, and it's your problem. If nothing else, go to the military, So here we are. We're naming and renaming and figuring this out. How many counselors did you go through, and when did you finally feel like somebody gets it?
Boy, that's a lot. I would say the very first, the one in middle school was, that was the best diagnosis because we went to clinical research where they covered every topic. So that's when we found out several things on that first pass. But when my daughter started acting out in school, different things with boys on and on, I think the marijuana was the first thing. Well, actually, I think cutting came in way before the drug. So I knew that there was pain being held. And then from there, I mean, there's been more than 10 programs or, helps that we have given. And a lot of parents couldn't afford to do what we have done. We've been able to supply and try to get her the best help we could. And I understand that. That's the hard part because and we will do anything, like Dina said, we will do anything for our child. So we have parents that have mortgaged homes, they have gotten loans, they have borrowed from their parents, and it becomes quite a big challenge to try to help someone get on the right track. But the truth is, they will not get on the right track unless they want to change and make those changes. So I do believe that every program we've been involved in, and my daughter would also say this, that every one of them has taught her something, but it wasn't enough for her to change. Or I call it kind of like an attack, or an attack would come at her another direction, like some dude or something, they would come at her a different direction and get her attention, and then she'd go a whole other direction. That's kind of where, we are with that.
If you were to tell someone, and I've heard this story from too many people, we spent so much money on therapy. We spent so much money on programs. We spent, and we've got no results. If you did it all over again, how would you do it? And not that there is even because, you're in discovery mode. You're Lewis and Clark. You're out in the river. You're out in the elements. You don't have any call number to go helicopter in and get us out.
Right.
You're out here trying to discover on your own because not enough people are talking about it. Not enough people have the answers, even within the answer realm. I called a counselor one time about a girl that was going through anorexia. And there's two, one in one state, one in another. He ended up in the same rehab place. I ended up knowing both parents.
Wow.
And I said, I've got to go. The parents want me to go talk to her. Am I supposed to be tough on her, or am I supposed to be very soft to her? He said, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He said, we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good answer.
Well, that's not helping me.
It's a good answer.
So tell me, would you do it over again, and how would you do it if you changed?
I honestly think that I would do everything that I've done because I'm pretty level-headed and I don't get irate and upset. I mean, we have had battles. I'm not saying that hasn't happened in our home with her.
Of course.
Or with my other sons or whatever. Those battles are there. So I'm not trying to lightheartedly say, oh, it's okay. It's not like that.
No.
I mean, we had issues with a son. We sent him to an outpatient type program. And in the wilderness, or however you want to say it.
Right.
It changed his life. Now, the program didn't change his life. What changed his life was him. It was like, I don't know, it was a crazy events that kind of lined up to things, but he found the Lord there. And it was because of the counselor that he trusted so much that led him to the Lord. So the program, it's people. It's relationships and people that change people. And you have to want to have a relationship, and then that relationship builds into that person, and then they want to change. So I would say that every counselor, every program, everywhere that you do send your child, there will be somebody there that will make an influence and speak some truth into that child that will carry forward with the next group of wherever you send them. For myself, we've had some suicide attempts, and that was one of the reasons that we first went to behavioral health. Because I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm not going to let her just spout these things off to me and me not react. So we did that, and I took her to behavioral health. They found out that she was cutting with paper. Now, everybody has paper in their home, right? It's an easy thing. But for her, she was in middle school, and she found out that she could cut with paper on her, in between her fingers, on her knee, different places that she could get that paper sharp enough that she could cut. And so that the therapist there exposed that to me, and I did not have a clue. I had taken her to the hospital because of a cut on a knee, but I had no idea that it was self-inflicted. I was still not aware, but that counselor did expose that to me. And so I think that every journey, don't be afraid to take them to the ER. Do not be afraid to call 911. Do not be afraid to admit your child to a hospital, because you might just save their life. And I've talked to parents whose children did not make it. And it's sad. It's like, what do you do in those situations? It's just so hard. So I'm hoping that parents that, read my book can get an idea to look for the Band-Aids in the bathroom, in the room, and ask questions. Oh, her excuse, oh, I kept myself shaving.
Mm-hmm.
There's always reasons. They're good liars.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good liars and very good manipulators, and they will get what they want, and you will just fall under that gaze of not knowing or seeing what's happening in front of you. I hope that my book would open up some eyes and also know that I can relate to your stories. I don't think there's much in the mental illness part of that I haven't touched on. Like you mentioned anorexia. I mean, there's not much of anything that I haven't had a touch on in that, but I didn't, address everything in the book, but I tried to hit main topics.
Well, and that's all you should do and have to do. I'm going to guess that most parents are not able to read volumes and volumes and volumes of stuff while they're dealing with this.
Right.
They're on the run. They're trying to make money so they can support their family, support the problem of mental illness and going to therapists and all kinds of stuff. I think that what your book is doing is giving hope to hope and going, listen, I'm still going through this, but I had enough about me today. I can write this down. I journal this down. I put this out there. And you can have this hope too. And also you need to write something down to help somebody else out.
I have 24 illustrations in here. My daughter saw some of the pictures. She goes, that's me. You have and my granddaughter also saw the picture, and this one's about time. And the girl, a girl was sitting at the computer with all the food and all the stuff all around her. And she's been on the computer for days. I mean, days, literally days. And that's true. That is a true statement that we did, because when they get in that mode of being on that internet, they're trying to fill a need. It's like, I need friends. I need to have an event. I need, it's like these fake friends that are supposed to fill their needs that don't exist. And they'll be the first ones to steal all your gaming stuff or whatever they do online,
Right.
And you have these, then you have to pick up your child again and go, okay. It's just a game. So you go through all these different avenues, but that was one of the illustrations, and my granddaughter could see herself in that, and we're not even there with her, but she's already like, oh, I can see that.
There's one a younger person in her 20s who put out that we are no longer humans, we're humatechs, is what she calls us, and even Elon Musk talks about that we're moving too fast. But students intuitively, you can give your phone to your grandchild who's 5, 6, 7, 8. If they've had anything with the technology, they have no fear, and they'll fix your phone for you. If you have a problem with it. So,
and they also have their own language, with the emojis and symbols.
Yes.
And, I mean, you don't even know what they're saying to each other.
No, you'd have to. By the time you learn, it's already something else.
So we pick up their things, we put them we carry them, we're carrying their backpacks. We end up doing everything for these children.
Yeah.
And it becomes like you just wait for that time when you get a piece of the puzzle that you can put into the life picture to have an answer to something you've been trying to figure out. So, that's kind of like the puzzle piece that you're waiting for. But in the meantime, we become pack rats. We become, we carry it all. We do it all. We carry their, not just their life, but we carry their life. And then we try to fit these pieces. When we find out a piece, we put it into the puzzle to get the answer that we've been waiting for, that we can maybe have a glimpse of. Now we can change and go another direction and help you this direction.
Is that where you're talking about the mousetrap type deal? I see the picture of the pile. She's sitting on a pile of of garbage and stuff, broken TVs and bikes and tires and everything. Is that what you're kind of alluding to?
Yeah, they're beautiful illustrations. The guy did an absolutely fabulous job, and he was a friend of mine. So that was a nice gift that he gave me to complete this.
I know KT pretty well. We've known each other for quite a while. These are not just easy decisions that she's made. These are not flighty decisions or thought processes. This is a well-honed, thought-out, really gone through the pain, gone through the dirt of it all, and come to these conclusions. You wrote a part in here about going into your prayer closet. Or you didn't say a prayer closet, you said your dark closet. And I understand that there are times, and by the way, since I'm ADD, I found when I was going through the most severe part of ministry, every part seems severe. But anyway, you go through the end of the last place that I was in full time, and I remember I would go to dark closets to find peace within the church buildings, and other places. So tell me about your closet visits and getting through when things were so hard.
Right. This was another incident, but it was a son. It took me to the depth of my core. I mean, that was my first, really the bomb that went off, kind of an explosion. And so I would go into that closet, and it was all my clothes, all those things. So I was surrounded with familiar things, and it just made me comfortable in that space. It was like I could scream, I could sing, I could do whatever I wanted in that space, because it was my space. My closet is my space, and I felt comfortable there. But then I would have to put on my happy face and walk out and do all my family duties, cook the meal, do everything. I didn't want them to know I was affected as deeply as I was. But that changed me. I mean, my whole being would just shake. I mean, it was just like I was shaken truly to my core. So those things, I think we learn from those kind of things, and we're able to encourage others when we hear stories, because we can relate. But that closet time, that was it for me. But then the other thought is that you can always go back to that closet and pick it up anytime you want to go back and pick up that mess.
Yes.
But the problem is we have to learn how to walk out of that door and shut the door. So we're not carrying around all this baggage for life. And we have to learn how to just address it and move forward. But it's not easy. I mean, it took me months to get past what I was feeling in those emotions.
Tell me about codependency. I'm looking at that chapter right now.
Well, for that, I would sit in her room for hours. She couldn't go to school these days. They have, when your child is so full of anxiety or depression or both, they can't function. And that is something the parent can't understand. They're like, okay, get up, pull your bootstraps up and get out the door and get going.
Yes.
Well, with my child, she had her homework done. It wasn't that. She had her clothes laid out for the next day, but she couldn't go to sleep because of all the thoughts in her head the night before. So she'd lay there awake and try to go to sleep. And by the time she fell asleep, it was time to wake up. And at that point, I couldn't wake her up. When she woke up, she was in a sleeping trance.
Yeah.
She could talk to me, but she wouldn't remember any of it. So this isn't really the codependent part, but that is part of my story in that particular story. But the codependent is like when, my daughter has borderline personality, which is attachment issues. So the attachment becomes very strong. And, if you leave the room, it's like, don't leave the room. They can't handle not having you in their presence. So, you're going to have those workouts where you have to try to figure out, like one time I walked out of the house and there was screaming going on. I'm like, what is this about? She goes, I thought you left. So you have to understand your child. If your child is in that space of attachments, then you have to know that they need to know that you're there. They need to know that you're available. And that's hard when they can push your buttons where you don't want to be available. You don't want to be in that space with them. Yeah. So it becomes really difficult.
It's difficult to know what's codependency and what is actual support. The lines are blurred. Is that what I'm hearing?
True. Right. It was so hard to wake her up that, I would call the counselor and say, how codependent do you want me to be? This is her school counselor who's counting all her days absent,
right.
And the counselor would respond, you do whatever it takes to get her to graduate. And we were a month and a half away from graduation. So all her senior projects, she had to do her junior, senior year in the same year. So all the core classes were from both junior and senior year were at her feet. It was challenging. And some people would say I graduated for her, but no, she did the work and I couldn't take her test. So she did the work, but from the outside looking in, they're going to say, oh, you did it for her. That's because I made her get up. I made her go to school when I could. I would even drive her, take care, do that. I did what I had to do to get her to graduate, and she did walk across that stage. The counselor explained to me if she didn't graduate, she would have to go back and get a GED, which they have started. From that time, there was a new procedure that it was going to be a whole another 2 years that she would have to go through to get that GED.
Which would be 2 more years of torture.
Exactly. She would have never done that. So it was very important to get her to graduate, and she did.
So there's a balance between what is codependent and what is support.
True. Mm-hmm.
And the counselor was helping you through this. Anyone, once again, who has not gone through this is going to be judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who has gone through this with normal, teenagers are crazy anyway.
Oh, yes.
You're going from a concrete thinking as an elementary school kid into middle school to abstract, and you're in between concrete and abstract. You get to high school, you're finally in pretty much abstract thinking, but you're still leaning towards some other concretes.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, you're still adolescent till girls are 22, guys are 25.
Right.
And they're doing all these major life decisions on an adolescent mind. We can't hold their hand. We understand all that.
Mm-hmm.
We got to let them stretch through some of those things.
I was feeling guilty, like, my gosh, what do I do here? Do I just let her just fail? Because, I've heard that also. Well, just let them just fail. Let them just, they'll repeat a grade, whatever. Let them just do that.
Yeah.
But when I took it to her, she was dealing with those same type of kids. That was her job.
Right.
And she said, no, you get her to graduate.
Right.
So then it became my job and to get that, to make sure that happened. And then if she decided not to, and she wasn't going to, then that was on her. But I did everything I could on my end to get her to graduate.
Right. And with a mentally ill person, here's what I found with certain levels. There's a lot of levels I haven't dealt with. And I'm not a counselor. I send people to counselors.
Yeah, I'm not a counselor.
That's what I did. And I learned that. I've learned that, don't do what you're not. Don't try to be who you're not, because you're only going to hurt people by doing that. But know who to send people to, keep people on your team. So any closing comments that you'd like to give us to youth workers, to parents, to maybe that individual that is listening that is going through mental illness on some level themselves,
mm-hmm.
but they're aware enough, or they've got enough handle on it to where they can understand. What words do you want to say at the end in closing here?
I would say don't give up hope, because hope is the one thing we could hold on to. There have been many parents that their children have come through this. They have normal lives. They can run a business. They can work. So it's not just the end. It can be a future. And getting them through this is all going to make them a part of their future, because they're going to learn so much about life. So, our goal is to give them the hope that they need and trust in God that He can continue and work in their lives.
That's awesome. That's great. Listen, guys, if you want to know more about KT Griffiths and her book, you need to go get it. Just go and get it through Amazon. You can get it through KDP, which is Kindle Books on Amazon.
Yeah.
Thanks again, KT, for being here and sharing your heart and your life. Thanks for writing this book. I know it's going to help a lot of people, and youth workers. Make sure that you go and purchase one or two. Maybe you want to purchase multiples to give away to families that are going through different things. Because if you've been in student ministry anytime at all, you'll end up dealing with some form of mental illness. If you have a child of your own, whether your child goes through anything or not, one of their friends probably will. We know things about mental health now in the last few decades more than we've ever known in the history of mankind. So we are very fortunate. Our purpose as youth workers is to help people in their pain and suffering and lead them toward Jesus, because you and I do not have all the answers, but God does. And not only does God, He has people that He has set apart to help people with these sort of problems, whether it's a youth worker or a volunteer or a pastor or a professional who's a family therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, someone that God has got right there to help each individual with these specific and particular problems. There's so many levels we're able to identify now that never before. And so, KT, thanks again for being here. Youth workers, keep doing what you're doing. Remember, the long term is where the ministry lies. 5 years is the beginning of the rest of your ministry. Get through that 5th year and see what God's got on the other side. All right, everyone. Have a great week. We'll see you in next week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us, and we'll be there for you. Adios.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.